Ansar Allah movement announced that they gave a 4-day notice to the Zionists that they would be continuing their operations against the Zionist state if they didn't allow for more aid to enter the country. Sorry, to enter Gaza. And I believe the 4-day deadline was yesterday or so. And the Ansar Allah movement announced that they would keep enforcing a blockade on the Red Sea, stopping boats from entering the port of Eilat. And then just before the Ansar Allah movement could start toward the Yemeni armed forces, at this point, that's what we could call them, the Yemeni resistance, before they could even start enforcing the blockade, the United States yesterday struck Sana'a, killing, from my understanding, over 59 civilians. And, Dimitri, a lot of people were saying, such as obviously Scott Ritter and others, that Trump was a revolution, an anti-imperialist revolution that would stop wars. Now, of course, we see that there's a bit more progress on the case of Gaza. We will see how that will unfold with the second phase of ceasefire. But this is the largest attack on Yemen in recent years. There's images that we could maybe look into later on. But Dimitri, any thoughts right now on the strikes that we saw in Sana'a last night?
Yeah, first I just want to comment on John Helmer's tweet, which you have up on the screen there. We interviewed John Helmer a couple of weeks ago, and I think John Helmer does great journalism, but I'm not quite in agreement with this tweet in one respect, and that is we really don't know. I have very mixed feelings about Tulsi Gabbard because she's been pretty good when she talks about what was going on in Ukraine, what was going on in Syria, but at the same time, she seems to be very sympathetic to Israel's genocidal regime. So I'm not a fan of Tulsi Gabbard. At the same time, she's the director of national intelligence, and she doesn't actually control Trump's decision-making when it comes to, whether to launch another act of aggression. She's there to give, a perspective on what's happening on the ground from an intelligence perspective. And after that, the so-called commander-in-chief calls the shots. So I don't know that she actually failed her first test. She might have counseled against what he's doing. We just don't know. But the bigger question is, is there any conceivable justification for what Donald Trump is now doing? So I think, we should go back and just sort of very, very briefly summarize how we got to where we are today. A civil war erupted in Yemen in late 2014. When what is now called the Ansar Allah movement overthrew a Saudi-backed regime. Since then, in a war that has been waged by a Saudi-led coalition with U.S. munitions and U.S. intelligence, more than 150,000 people have been killed in Yemen. This is according to the United Nations. And more than 217,000 died as a result of an ongoing famine and lack of healthcare facilities due to the Saudi-led coalition's depravity and blockade of Yemen. Throughout this time, really important to understand this, there really has never been a sustained cessation of Western-led aggression against Yemen. So I'm going to give you an example. So as I said, it started in late 2014. In January 2022, which was about 19 months before Israel launched its genocidal rampage in Gaza, and Ansar Allah announced that it was going to implement a blockade on Red Sea shipping in solidarity with the Palestinian people. 19 months before then, the Saudi-led coalition used a precision-guided munition made in the United States for an airstrike on a detention center in Sada in northwestern Yemen. And according to Doctors Without Borders, an international independent organization of medical professionals, that strike killed at least 80 people and injured over 200. This is in early 2022. Amnesty International inspected the site of the atrocity and concluded that a laser-guided bomb used in the attack was manufactured by the U.S. arms manufacturer Raytheon. Now, let's compare these casualty figures. I've talked to you about hundreds of thousands of people who were killed, starved to death, to the casualties caused by Ansar Allah since it began attacking Red Sea shipping. According to Western sources, those attacks occurring over a period of about 15 months killed a total of 4 sailors. 4 sailors. And, every one of those deaths is tragic. And I wouldn't want to see any sailor killed. These people are just out there doing a job. They're probably not well paid for the work that they do. And I don't support anybody killing the sailors on these ships, whatever these ships may be up to. But 4 sailors in 15 months in the attack just that occurred today, as you mentioned, Rami, in one day, the Trump administration managed to kill far more people in Yemen than Ansar Allah killed on Red Sea ships in 15 months. And we're supposed to believe that Ansar Allah is a terrorist movement, but that the Trump administration is not a terrorist entity, that the US military, the Israeli military, is not a terrorist entity. Are you kidding me? The numbers of innocents that they have killed with their depravity far exceeds any number of civilians that could reasonably be claimed to have been killed by all of the resistance groups in West Asia put together. Add them all up. Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Hamas, Ansar Allah, the popular militias in Iraq, their civilian casualties, those that they have caused, are a tiny fraction of those that have been caused during the same period by the US government, by Israel, and by other Western governments, and by their proxies in West Asia. It's absurd that we are calling Ansar Allah a terrorist organization while giving a free pass to the people who have completely devastated Yemen. And I haven't even mentioned, Rami, the most important consideration of all, and that is that Ansar Allah is doing this. They're trying to block Red Sea shipping because they want an end to the genocide in Gaza. When the ceasefire was entered into several weeks ago, at late January, Ansar Allah stopped attacking shipping in the Red Sea, consistent with the assurances it had been giving for 15 months that if the destruction of Gaza stopped, they would stop the attacks. They have nothing to gain from this. They have nothing to gain by attacking Red Sea shipping. They have only lost as a result of their attacks on Red Sea shipping. It is absolutely crystal clear to any rational observer that they're doing it as an act of solidarity and a great sacrifice to support the Palestinian people. That's all I have to say about this. I'm absolutely sickened and outraged by what they're doing to Yemen. I hope very much that we can get into that. We've been trying for months to get into Yemen to see for ourselves what the depraved leaders of the West, again, I use that word advisedly, have done to that country. But there is no reason to believe, absolutely no reason to believe, that bombing Yemen is going to result in an end to these attacks on Red Sea shipping. The only thing that is going to stop this resistance organization is an end to the genocide in Gaza. And if Trump was the peacemaker,
Dimitri,
even half the peacemaker he claimed to be, he would stop giving munitions to Israel, and then the Red Sea shipping could flow freely without any impediment.
and Dimitri, I want to insist or put emphasis on the fact that the entire world has an obligation to end the genocide, and Sadallah is picking up their duties. And then the other thing is that Israel, if it would have followed the terms of the first day of the ceasefire, this wouldn't have happened. So there has been no aid that has been entering Gaza since, I believe, the 5th of March. That's
Yeah,
11 of no single aid entering the Gaza Strip. There was more aid entering the Gaza Strip during during combative periods than since the 5th of March, and that is during the holy month of Ramadan,
yeah.
uh,
And
where
why
people
did
are.
they stop humanitarian aid, Rami? You remember why? Because they refused, the Israelis, to comply with their obligation to leave the Philadelphia corridor, and they insisted that Hamas continue releasing these prisoners of war, these soldiers who remain in their custody, even though Israel reneged on that undertaking. So what is happening is that Trump has resumed these monstrous attacks on Yemen in order to facilitate Israel's violation of the ceasefire agreement. That's what's happening. It's as simple as that.
And to never enter the second and to never enter the second phase of the ceasefire, so that we're stuck at the phase one, so that Israel could get its prisoners back without conceding any political demands that the resistance Gaza is asking for. Um,
Exactly.
so I just have one more link here that I wanted to share about what's happening in Yemen. I'm not quite sure if it's still relevant, but this is, yeah. So this is just the footage of. Am I sharing it right now? Just the footage of of um, of the strikes last night on Sana'a. Um, this is, yeah, this is just a great stain on the legacy of Donald Trump, and um, truly, like there's no one's condemning strikes on the Yemeni capital. Um, yeah. So just
What a
to
disgrace that man is. He's an absolute disgrace. Please don't anybody ever tell me again that that man is interested in peace. Nobody. I can't.
um,
I can't abide this crap anymore.
so early on during the during the inauguration of Trump, Trump mentioned around 1 month into his mandate that he wanted to um, deport supporters of Palestine, or what he described supporters of Hamas. We weren't too sure how was that going to unfold, but then recently, earlier last week, we saw that ICE ended up arresting a Palestinian, I believe, who grew up in Syria. Name is Mahmoud Khalil, who's a student at Columbia University. He was leading some of the protests happening on Columbia University. He is in the country under a green card, I believe. It's a green card. And his wife is currently 8 months pregnant. He's expecting a child. And just ICE put him under detention. He didn't really have access to a lawyer during the early for many hours after his detention. Um, he's exercising his First Amendment, freedom of speech, advocating for the rights of the Palestinian people on university campus. Keep in mind that in Europe, there's a huge culture of not allowing police on campus and to protect the sanctity of students, the sanctity of universities. To see Trump, uh, you know, clearly push for the deportation of students, that came to me at an extreme shock, especially since I was involved on student politics and Palestine activism on my university campus. Um, and then quickly right after, we have the White House Instagram account, which posted this picture over here, um, which says, oh, they changed it. They used to say Shalom. Maybe I have the wrong one here. Yeah, Shalom Mahmoud. So basically, uh, using Hebrew words to say goodbye to Mahmoud, as we're anticipating that he'll get deported from the United States. So, Dimitri, any thoughts on this?
A couple of really interesting aspects to the story. A federal judge has blocked, for the time being, the deportation of Khalil unless and until the judge orders otherwise. He cannot be deported from the country, and this has been done because the judge clearly has serious doubts as to the legality of what they're doing to Khalil. He has not been charged with any crime. Basically, the U.S. government is saying that his presence is contrary to national security, but not charged him with a single criminal offense, which tells you all you need to know about what is going on here. He's being sought to be deported because of his advocacy for the Palestinian people. It'll be very interesting to see whether this judge ultimately, after there's a full hearing on the basis on which this is being done, whether the judge will permanently bar the deportation of Khalil. There was another case that just was decided by a U.S. federal judge involving others who were sought to be deported by the United States based upon a law that I think is like 200 years old. I can't remember the name of the law, but it dates all the way back, I think, to the Civil War era. And the law apparently, I haven't read the law, so please take this with a grain of salt, but apparently the law allows the U.S. government to deport people summarily in times of war. The problem that the United States has is that it's not declared war against any country associated with the people who were sought to be deported in this other case. I believe they were Venezuelans. I'm pretty sure about that. So the judge said, we're not at war with Venezuela, therefore you can't rely upon this law. So I'm not sure if they're using the same law in the case of Khalil, but I think they're going to run into the same problem. And in any event, whatever law they're invoking, it should be clear to any rational, objective judge that the reason why they want to deport Khalil is not because of his affiliations with any terrorist organization. There's no evidence that he has any such affiliations. It's because he defends the Palestinian cause and he's a student on Columbia University's campus. That's it. So if the First Amendment means anything, this should be stopped, and without any hesitation. The other aspect of this, Rami, which is quite interesting, is that apparently Khalil was, before coming to Columbia University, he was working for the British government in a kind of soft power position involving the U.S. government's or the British government's regime change operations in Syria. And a lot of people have commented. Again, I haven't had the time this week to investigate this myself, but I've seen commentary about this. Laith Marouf has talked about it. Apparently, the Middle East Eye has written about it. The Gray Zone Project has talked about this. And all of them are saying, I think with complete justification, if all of this is true, and I have no reason to doubt that it is true, that there's a lesson here for anybody who is tempted to cooperate with Western governments in their regime change operations. The moment that they feel that you can be dispensed with and you no longer serve any purpose for them, they'll throw you under the bus. They're doing this in the case of Ukraine. They're throwing Ukraine under the bus because the proxy war is lost. And they've decided they want to devote their economic and military resources to containing China. So they're just dumping Ukraine on the trash heap of humanity. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Nothing good can come from cooperating with these imperialists.
And while I'm sure there's a lot of space to be critical of Khalil and his work for organizations that are despisable, right? The British Embassy. I hear in the comments here that he worked as a translator for the for the British Embassy. What is scaring me at least is this headline that I saw, which is pro-Israel group says it has a deportation list and has sent thousands of names to Trump officials. So this is no longer about Mahmoud Khalil, and it's more about, well, pretty much everyone that has been doxxed by Israeli groups. They're compiling a list, and we're going to be noticing we could expect either a deportation of hundreds of Palestinians or pro-Palestinian advocates, or a taming of the pro-Palestinian movement, because now, I mean, we know the importance of the student movement and university protests, but are people going to risk getting deported to keep up with to stand for Palestine, right? So this battle is fought on many fronts, in Yemen, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, the West Bank, and to a limited extent as well on university student campuses. And what we're seeing is that the United States is involved on every single one of these fronts and is holding everyone to 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 the boot of their the grip of their power. So yeah, Dimitri, any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So the a very important point you're making, Rami. We lawyers call this chilling free speech. You don't have to throw every student activist, pro-Palestinian student activists in the United States in jail in order to silence a whole lot of them. You just have to make an example out of one or two. You don't have to throw every, courageous, independent, investigative journalist in jail in order to deter them all from speaking out and doing their job. You just take somebody like Julian Assange and you throw him into a maximum security prison and you psychologically torture him for several years to get the message out to everybody out there that your dissent will not be tolerated. So Mahmoud Khalil, whatever the truth may be about his, work for the British government, there's no doubt in my mind that they are making an example out of him for the simple reason that he spoke in defense of the Palestinian people, and they will continue down this path until we have all been silenced. I have said it 100 times since the genocide began. I'm not going to stop saying it. The greatest threat to our civil liberties today is Zionism, period.